I want you to imagine we are about to play Tabletop Dungeons & Dragons to embark on a fantastical, imagination-based, narrative-driven adventure together. I have 2 characters ready to go and you get to choose who I play as, and then you'll make the same choice from an MMO gaming perspective, and you'll begin to see why the role-playing aspect doesn't work that well in an MMO. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm Josh Drive-Hayes. I've been a fan of Dungeons & Dragons since I was a kid, and I've been a dungeon master since I was in college. I'm one of those DMs that takes it quite seriously and values the immersion. In fact, when I'm playing, I even printed off and made all of the maps that my players would need to explore the area they were in, and instead of asking them to refer to the player handbook to find all their spells, I handmade, out of faux leather, paper and some duct tape, a little spell book, so people could just keep looking up their spells in this instead. To me, that made the game feel more immersive, because I value the role-playing element of those kind of games. So with MMORPG, you'd assume, because it is a role-playing game, you can simply transfer the role-play skills you have from tabletop RPGs over to video game RPGs. But it doesn't quite work that well, does it? Video games face a lot of problems, a lot of troubles that tabletop games are able to simply overcome by adapting the rules on the fly, by having the dungeon master change things. Roleplay in an MMO is not exactly the same as roleplay in a tabletop game. You'll face many mechanical challenges and gameplay blocks, so let's talk about those. If you're an RPG fan, consider dropping a like on the video or subscribing to the channel for more RPG stuff. Ring the bell for all the future notifications. A massive thank you to all the supporters on Patreon and Twitch who keep the channel going. More on this at the end. For now, let's begin. So we've sat down to play Dungeons & Dragons, we've got snacks and drinks, and there's ambient adventure music playing. You have your characters ready, and I have 2 characters to choose from. Help me make my choice. The first character is Jaxel Gallows, an outwardly cheeky but inwardly quite nervous rogue from Baldur's Gate. Jaxel failed the Thieves Guild entrance test in the port town of Athkatla, but has been travelling the land claiming to be a Thieves Guild messenger. He's been using this fake position to gain entrance to seedy taverns and build up friendships with the wrong people. He wears black leather armour, which he tells people was charred black from the breath of a dragon he fought on the elemental plane of fire. But in reality, he spent a week rubbing charcoal into it. The other character is a healer, called Healer. Jaxel Gallows will often run his mouth and anger the wrong person, but then quickly attempt to hide behind whatever city guard or tavern patron he thinks would support him in a fight. He's quick to start conflict and quicker to run away from them, and if he absolutely has to fight, he'll use whatever dirty distraction technique he can think of. Smoke bombs, starting small fires, throwing innocent people in the way. And after the fight he finished, he'll often retell the heroic story of how he single-handedly saved a village from burning down, despite the fact he is often the one who started the fire. Healer will avoid all enemies that you avoid and keep you on maximum health at all times. Jaxel will often avoid using better or more powerful weapons. He'll claim this is because he wants to honour the old ways and trust his old dagger more than a newfangled sword, but in reality, it's because he's not confident enough to use anything else. And he knows if he is seen using a powerful weapon and failing, the blame must lie on him. And Jaxel isn't quite ready to face the harsh fact that he's not as good as he thinks he is. But given time, if someone were to train him, he could become an extremely skilled fighter. He's held back by his confidence issues, not his actual potential. Healer will automatically equip whatever item or weapon gives them the highest stats. Now, which of these 2 characters would you rather play alongside in a tabletop D&D game? Jaxel, the arrogant but deeply flawed rogue who will likely get you into unexpected trouble, or Healer, the healer who will heal you? Most people who have played D&D would say Jaxel, because the backstory, the history, the character, the quirks, they all combine to enhance the moment-to-moment adventure. The trouble you'll get into is the story, and the daring escapes are the tales you will tell others. A flawed character makes for the best character arc, and a tabletop RPG is mostly about the story, the adventure. not the success. The role-playing of the character's flaws and unique traits actively enhances the strengths of the medium, the actual storytelling element, even when it goes against the mechanical ideal, the highest numbers. The RPG, as far as tabletop is concerned, is about the playing of the role of an emotionally unique character. Now imagine you are in charge of an endgame guild in an MMORPG and you are responsible for setting up a team of people to go and do an endgame raid. Would you rather take Jaxel, the unreliable, inefficient wildcard DPS who you can't control, or would you rather take Healer, the healer who will keep you healed? Now most people want the healer, but why? Well, it's because in an MMORPG it's more about the success of the actual event and less about the story that leads up to that success. In the MMO, the mechanical ideal is valued more than the personal emotional connection that any individual player has to their avatar. The act of role-playing a character in an MMORPG is not wanted if it goes against gameplay. In MMORPG, the roleplay is about playing the role of your mechanical choices and your mechanical responsibilities within a group, not your personal story. One of the most important sessions to have in any tabletop role-playing game is Session 0, a day where all the players meet up and discuss the type of adventure they want to have. Will it focus on combat or political intrigue? Will it be high magic or low magic? Will the violence be extreme or refined? Will the game be 100% following the rulebook, or will the DM be spicing things up and adding their own little flourishes? What type of game do the players want? Session 0 is essential in guaranteeing that all players are on board with the general feel of the adventure they're about to have. And one of the elements you will discuss is how much role-playing will there be. Will players speak for their characters? Will they do accents? Will the dungeon master be voicing all of the NPCs? Will conflicts be solved via words or via violence, or both? Will experience still be given if the situation is resolved without a fight? In an MMO, there is no Session 0. Players do not get the chance to discuss the type of gameplay they want, so it's left to the majority of the playing community to band together once in the game, to find the people also playing who want a similar adventure. And this is where the major problem can occur. The majority of a modern day MMO player base do not care about the story. Most players will go through many MMORPGs completely unaware they even have a story. You ask someone who's played RuneScape for many years, what's the main plot of RuneScape? Not that many people will be able to actually tell you. You can play Final Fantasy XIV for months without touching the main story quest. You can go through a lot of World of Warcraft content without actually understanding how it all relates to each other. It's become a meme that you spacebar through the RuneScape quests, that you just don't bother reading any quest NPC dialogue and just click next and go and see what the tick list then tells you to go and do. And if you want to do that, that's fine. That's your choice to play an MMO your way. This means your experience will be mostly a mechanical one. You'll be increasing your level, increasing your stats, finding better equipment, finding the most efficient rotation. To you, the gameplay experience of an MMORPG is about role-playing within the mechanical constraints and being efficient within the game. And that's absolutely fine. If that's how you want to play, that's how you want to play. No one can tell you you're wrong for doing that. This means that you are a mechanics-focused role player. But some players want the plot, the history, the personal connection, and to them the mechanics should serve to enhance the story. If you're playing a rogue in the Thieves Guild and you use Thieves Guild armor and weapons, you will be happier, even if the numbers and the stats are lower than other armor you have access to. If you're playing a paladin, wear the paladin order armor, even if the set effect isn't as good as another. To these players, the role they are playing is a character in a story. Even though more powerful or more efficient items or tactics may be available, they won't use them because they wouldn't fit the story they are telling. These players don't simply see the MMO as a mechanical challenge to be solved, they see it as an adventure they are part of, controlling a specific character they have created within a greater world, and that character has limitations. they will struggle against the game mechanics, using the less efficient methods and making mistakes precisely because that's what their character would do. This is the gameplay of a more emotional, character, backstory-focused player, and again, this is an absolutely fine way to play. The problem comes when both types of players are forced to play together, because there's been no session zero and no agreement on what type of experience they want to have. Players wanting two totally different experiences will be forced to play the game together, and that's not going to give either player what they want. A mechanical MMO player, one who focuses more on beating the challenge of the game through the use of the correct numbers and the use of the correct rotation, will care more about the victory than the personal emotional process used to get there, because the process to them is just a series of steps that they are unemotionally connected to. You must do A, then do B, then do C, and then you win. And to them, the winning is what matters the most. That's absolutely fine. The role play is the role they played in making victory happen. Tank, healer, or DPS, their mechanical contribution. Two more emotionally focused players, the process is more important than the victory. It's the attempting in the process while remaining in your specific personal character within the parameters you've given yourself to act in that matters more to them. They will use the armor that they like the look of, the weapons they feel the character would be confident with, the abilities that resonate emotionally with them, while not necessarily being the best tools for the job for every single situation. And because it's the process that matters more than the victory to these players, failure is actually not necessarily a negative thing. Failing the process is still part of the process. That becomes the story they then go and tell. That becomes the personal memory of that character. Failure is not necessarily you've wasted your time, it's this character's backstory is now even deeper because they have a personal connection, a personal failure within this specific dungeon to this specific boss. It's not a waste of time, it's another tale to tell in the tavern, it's another reason to hate the boss, it's another personal vendetta to follow through on. To the story-driven role player, any time spent in the game is time spent developing the character, whether that's success or failure. One of the main reasons a large amount of MMO players don't find much value in the role-playing concept is it isn't trackable, not overtly anyway. With stats and skills you can see numbers go up, bars fill, skill rotations increase, and armor sets can be equipped. With mechanical elements you have trackable numbers. You increase in level, you see your damage numbers go up, you see your health drain slower, you can objectively say I am better than I was before. And as players, most people like this. It's fulfilling to see a trackable increase, to know you have actual proof that progress was made. That number was low, now it is high. Role-playing, however, on an emotional level, a personal character story level, doesn't have that. Things are tracked by the player or the player's friends if they are paying attention. If you are role-playing a character who hates elves, you may refuse to visit an elf-friendly tavern. You may refuse to team up with an elf, or even attack elves on sight. But then, over the next few months of gameplay, you might be forced to watch as you see elves performing good deeds, helping others. Maybe you are trapped yourself and an elf player saves you, or saves a friend of yours. And eventually, you find the personal strength to reflect on your actions and then sit in an elf-friendly tavern and have a drink. When they start singing elf songs, you leave because you're not quite that comfortable yet, but you have changed. You've grown as a person, as a character, and your role-playing will reflect this. All this is tracked in your own head. Other players cannot see this, or they won't care even if they could. Personal character role-playing isn't measured in numbers, and so a vast majority of the MMO player base won't be able to see any immediate value in it, because a vast majority are mechanical players and you've done nothing mechanical. So emotional role-playing is about placing your character's traits, personality, loves, hates, desires, wants, fears above all. It's about placing your character's specific reason for living, for existing, for adventuring above the mechanical efficiency, above the meta choices. In some cases, actively hindering it, because you will not choose the most effective weapon armor, spell, ability, rotation, or build unless that resonates with you. If you are actively role-playing as a character that has specific desires, you might need to actively go against the most efficient way to play the game, and that actually weakens any specific group. And if you are using weaker weapons or weaker armor or weaker spells because that's what your character would do, that's fine for you, but once you start playing as a group, then you're actually weakening and affecting the group. And the problem with this is because you never had session 0, because every single player didn't sit down and agree what they wanted, you are then forcing a mechanical focused group to accept a non-mechanical focused player, or a roleplay focused group would then have to accept a non-roleplay focused player. People assume just because everyone plays the same MMORPG, they all want the same experience within that game. That's not true at all. You may have 1 million players within the game, but you might also have 1 million people wanting 1 million different specific styles of adventure, mechanical or roleplay. Mechanical numbers and efficiency will increase your chance of solving a problem, of completing a dungeon within a game. But emotional roleplay connection to your character will enhance the emotional impact that completing the dungeon actually has. And now one of the biggest ironies of the personal roleplay element being so overlooked in modern MMOs. When you create your character in almost every single MMO, the first few choices you will make are all personal, emotional, roleplay related. When you pick your avatar's shape, size, hairstyle, hair or eye colour. In games like Neverwinter, you can pick the starting city they come from. Guild Wars 2 allows you to pick a backstory. Final Fantasy XIV lets you pick a goddess and a birthday. So many MMOs allow you to customize your character with choices that are purely emotional role-playing. They will not mechanically affect your character at all, and then all players immediately forget them because they don't affect the game moment to moment. Where you're from in Neverwinter makes no difference at all to the mechanics. You need to actively choose to involve it in your personal role-playing for it to have any relevance. Your birthday in Final Fantasy XIV doesn't matter, it's just role-playing. Your hairstyle in any game is just a role-play aesthetic, not mechanically significant in any way. And yet, there is an argument to be made that most players on some level do understand the value of role-playing because then they name their character, and they become attached to that name. The character begins to exist as a separate entity from themselves, and if you ask anyone, tell me about your first MMO character, they will often recall with glee the adventures and exploits they went on. All MMOs start with at least some personal roleplay choices, and then the vast majority of the player base won't remember the vast majority of these choices because emotional roleplay isn't a thing that is seen as an important thing to focus on in an MMO. And this again just brings up the question, have we lost the emotional, player-connected role-play element within the MMORPG genre? And the answer is no, we haven't. Those players are still out there. They are just few and far between. And if you are a role-play focused player, if you are someone who places your personal story and your character's desires, loves and hates above the mechanical efficiency of playing a game, you need to actively seek out other players who also want that experience, because the majority of MMO players don't. Most MMOs have role-play worlds, specific places designed to bring all the role players together, and because the personal, emotional, story-driven community is somewhat small compared to the mechanical MMO players, these worlds are often much quieter. If you choose to play an MMORPG focusing on the classic old-school personal element of role-playing a character, at some point you're going to be actively refusing to follow the meta. You're going to use less efficient weapons, armor, abilities, or tactics. Maybe you'll refuse to use magic to transport around or only travel at night, and all of these choices will mechanically hinder you. And that's absolutely fine. Many people find great joy in doing this, but you'll need to actively seek out other people who also enjoy this playstyle and then play with them. Because when an emotional roleplay focused player joins a mechanical focused group, the group become irritated by that one player's refusal to follow the mechanics. And on the flip side, if a mechanic focused player joins a roleplay group, the roleplay group would be annoyed at the lack of personal story or emotional investment being shown. The RPG element of the MMO is still there, but it's split rather unfairly between majority mechanical players and minority storytelling players. Find the group you resonate with and enjoy your time with them. A few years ago I was role-playing an archer on RuneScape, and I was training on some enemies with a certain bow and certain arrows wearing a certain kit, and someone walked past me in RuneScape and they said, and I think they were being helpful in their own mind, but they said, "You don't want to use that." Now what they meant was, you are not training efficiently. They automatically assumed I was a mechanical player and the mechanics I was using were not the most efficient available. And that phrase, "you don't want to use that." Being a mechanical player has actually become the standard. When you see someone playing an MMO, you assume they are going to want the highest numbers, the best weapon, the rarest equipment, the most money, to use the meta tactics in any fight. People often forget that some people do play MMO RPGs for the RPG element, and they roleplay their own personal connection. When they said, "You don't want to use that," they were wrong. It's not the most efficient thing I could use, but I did want to use it. If you are a purely mechanical player and you cannot see any value in why on earth people would roleplay, why on earth people would play inefficiently, why anyone would play an MMORPG to do anything less than be the best, have the best items, do the most damage, just try. Make a new character, give them a strange name, give them a personality trait that you've maybe never roleplayed before, give them a specific desire, give them a lifestyle, give them a history, a backstory, and have them play. You might be surprised with how much fun you actually do end up having. We've all read the stories of the World of Warcraft player who played as a panda, didn't join either the Horde or the Alliance, and reached max level just by picking flowers, because that was what they wanted to roleplay as. We've all seen those people in RuneScape in the Grand Exchange who walk around pretending to be drunk. Mr. Alcohol was one of the great examples. He just walks around taking swigs from a big beer barrel, chatting to people, role-playing being drunk. Go to Final Fantasy XIV's Limsa Lominsa and listen to all the bards playing the instruments. It's not efficient, but it is roleplay. Actual in-game immersion of your character living their lifestyle. If you're burnt out of the MMO bit, try the RPG bit. You might be surprised with what you find. If you've roleplayed in any MMO and you enjoyed the story or you have a great story to tell, please let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear about all the adventures you and your characters have been on. As always, thank you for watching, and another massive thank you to the supporters on Patreon and Twitch who keep the channel going. You can support from only £1 a month. Check the video description for links to the Patreon, Twitch, Twitter, Discord, and our subreddit. And as always, have a great day.